Good afternoon and welcome to a session of Digital Futures World, presenting some of the workshops of this year's event, Inclusive Futures 2021. Today we're going to have some workshops from the Russian region and the Western European region. My name is Antonio Bernacchi and I'm part of the Digital Futures team, and I was coordinating part of the European workshops. And together today, there's also Maria Kuptsova for the Russian region. You can, Maria.
Thank you, Antonio. Yes, it's very nice to be here. Thank you very much.
So,
should we start?
Yes, please, you can go ahead.
Yeah, maybe I start the introduction of the Russian region first. It has been a great chance for us to introduce some great Russian experts who are working in the field of digital computation and the computation architecture. And maybe if you go to the next slide, we could show some workshops that we have been introducing from Russian side this year. The SA Lab team, Alina and Stepan, who will be presenting today, we're running two different workshops on the digital architecture. One of them, they will present themselves, the WEBITECTURE. So basically, they were designing the inclusive tools which help us to design the web applications and create the architecture tools much more accessible for different users, as well as they were running the basics of parametric design in Russian. And with this workshop, we really wanted to knock any village in Russia and make this new, maybe for some students, tools accessible. We had a synthetic intelligence workshop, which jumped to the different type of the skills. I personally ran it with my colleague, Artem Konevsky, who was in charge of coding. And we had also as a guest tutor, Professor Claudia Pasquero, who was a guest critique at the several sessions. And we were introducing here the AI and the machine learning as a new tool, which could be taking part in the architectural design. Similar methods, Katerina Larina and Eduard Hyman were using in their workshop architecture of time-based data sculptures. We will also present this workshop today a bit later. Beyond Matter workshop was run by Digitazen.net team and was introducing another tool, VR and AR, in the architectural design. The workshop Live Form by Katerina Briskina and Natalia Nemkova was going to the field of the biocomputation and getting inspired by the work of Katerina Briskina in the kind of mycelium structures and bringing this to the scale of the megastructures. Based as a Story is another great workshop run by Daria Smakhtina. She will be also presenting this workshop a bit later. Was also introducing VR techniques and the hybrid reality in the field of architecture. And Digital Leaves is a workshop which was introduced by the team of Itmore University Art and Science Master Program and was making a great jump from the experiments with the biology, with biological matter, and then converting it through the digital tools into the space and hybrid reality. So I think that this is a very short intro, but that has been a great chance to have this mixture and discuss it together with participants. And I would like to invite for the presentations 3 our teams of instructors. We will start with Katerina and Eduard, then we'll follow Daria's presentation, and then presentation of Alina and Stepan. Katya, Eduard, you can start. No, well, yeah. Antonio, do you want to
we can go ahead. I think with them, please.
Okay.
Hi everyone. Thank you very much for the great experience being a part of such an interesting event, such an exciting event, and we've been thrilled to participate and now to present the results of our work. This workshop we run together with Eduard Heimann. Ed, you can say hi. Is he there?
Okay.
Yeah, and he will. So the name of our workshop is Architecture of Time-Based Data Sculptures. Quite a long name because it was some sort of an experiment for us, so we couldn't really define it to be a little bit more clear. Ed, if you can just move on, maybe it's worth just introducing ourselves. So my name is Larina, and I work already for over 15 years in landscape practice and landscape research. I teach a landscape master program in UCL+, and I teach exchange program in architectural association. I'm kind of balancing between the real practice in landscape architecture design and landscape research. And I don't know, Eduard, a few words about you?
I'm an architect, and I am a designer who work with computational systems and work with data visualization. And now I'm recently interested in the artificial intelligence and how it can be applied to the architects.
Okay, so I must say that the brief of our workshop is based on 3 kind of research projects and 3 pieces of work we did with Ed. So one is kind of my work and my research, which is about kind of deteriorated landscapes and declining urban environments, in particular beyond Arctic Circle in Russia and part of Russian Siberia. So the second work is so-called Chronotop. It's a platform developed by Ed with the team of his colleagues from Habidatum. Where they kind of and we used this obviously it's a very sophisticated data visualization tool, but we used just an idea of graphic representation of time when let's say transformation is represented as a 3-dimensional graph, and time is, let's say, placed in this vertical X. So when you see the transformation of the of the territory as a 3-dimensional object. And the third work is experiments with AI done by Ed. His recent work, which he calls Endless Skyscraper, which is quite an interesting project. And he will say a few words explaining it a little bit more.
This is a project was about experimenting with the Style Gun 2, which will allow me to think about the property and lessons and continuity as a property for architecture, because the JN outcome is has a property of the seamless, and there was interesting to understand how this property can be applied to the architecture and to the new form of the new shape of the architecture. And during these experiments, I work with these shapes and the procedural shaders to generate the new kind of the aesthetic and the actually this the pipeline which was produced during these experiments, we tried to apply it to the landscapes, and Katya can say about this.
Yeah. So basically, as experiment, he was dealing with all these kind of varieties of plans of the building, and then kind of all these plans digested through AI tools and system. Then he allowed this creation of this endless structure. So in a way, we kind of used the same similar tools, but decided to kind of jump out of this limitation of only architectural scale and move into the territory and move into from one side, so scale it up, and from another side add another dimension, is a transformation of that territory. So as a starting point, we basically we took kind of data sets extracted from the Google Earth engine, and we dealt with these different kind of source with these different data sets, and we were filtering these data sets using different filters, which something like, I don't know, the level of reflection or level of greenery and etc. So trying to extract some sorts of layers which would somehow show us the transformation of the territory, the kind of the degradation of the landscape or the growth of the landscape. Using that, so this is example of the raw data we received from these satellite imagery. In a way, we discovered quite a few limitations, which with the quality of these data sets, and with their resolution, with clarity, timeline. So we kind of during the workshop, we discovered lots of obstacles we had to kind of resolve, and so that's one thing. So maybe moving to the next slide, Ed. Yeah, this is example when we already took this data and somehow input it into these generative adversarial networks, this kind of AI engine, which started digesting and somehow reinterpreting these data which were reflecting some sort of dynamic process in the landscape. And with this, we saw kind of a new a new look at the dynamic processes. Already filtered through the AI kind of understanding of the dynamic processes we input, we visualize this in the three-dimensional kind of graphs as similar to chronotop I showed you earlier. And these kind of where each layer of this three-dimensional structure is extruded kind of data, where you kind of see the transformation of the particular layer in the landscape. So I guess if we move on, yeah, I must say that it was a total experiment to us. That's why we named our workshop Data Sculptures, because we were not sure that we can really create a serious analytical tool which could show us some sort of clear data. But that was quite a lot of interesting discoveries on the way, including how would you visualize these three-dimensional graphs? Do you prefer to use a heat map, or do you prefer, if you go to the next slide, like the outlines? Ed, if you can click, yeah, this one. So together with students, we were like totally embrace the experiment based on those tools and the challenges we set to ourselves. Maybe I'll just show quickly a few projects which you guys did. So this is the project of Yelizaveta Lyubimova. She actually was kind of more systematic, and she wanted to compare the kind of the real dynamic data which we extracted from satellite and the data which has been filtered kind of and reviewed by the AI. And so she took as a landscape, she took Aral Sea, which is, as you know, almost disappeared by now, and all these kind of data of deterioration of these water body and disappearance of this water body. She converted that in this three-dimensional sculpture graph. And she was trying to compare, let's say on the left hand side, you see kind of the real data. On the right hand side is the data interpreted by AI to us. Obviously, you can see there is a kind of limitation when you see it as a kind of object from outside. You need to find a new visual techniques in order to see the transformation and see kind of the resolution of this data. So obviously you need to, we don't have a video, but you need to kind of fly through, get inside, start kind of making sections of this volume. Yeah, exactly. To kind of to really start getting understanding it. So this is project from Niloufar Zakir, and she took these data sculptures less as a kind of analytical tool and more as a just sculpture, and it's like all this transformation is an opportunity to play with the surface. So she used the data sets which we kind of used during the workshop. I think it was a deforestation in process, and then she just gone wild with the surface of this sculpture, of these digital data sculptures, and played with them, applying additional tools and additional scripts on the surface. And I think the last project, let me check. And the last project by Laura Luna Castillo, she was, I don't remember, I think she didn't have an architectural background. She was more interested in kind of media art. So as a data source, she actually took the collection of furniture images, and it's like from the furniture catalogs. And she obviously, like AI, filtered through those kind of furniture catalogs, gave some sorts of the interpretation of the interiors and pieces of furniture. And then she created on the basis of that some sorts of this three-dimensional sculpture, which is, she was very excited because it somehow resembled a building. It has some sort of slabs and etc. And there was this, she was thinking that it somehow, it creates, had these spatial properties of these traces of the interior design. So it's that was an interesting experiment to us to play, to play with data and somehow not kind of try not totally to lose the traces of that data in these kind of new ways, new techniques of representation, and maybe just finding a kind of new angles and new ways to look at the way how we represent some sort of dynamic processes instead of just kind of laying out maps. I don't know, Ed, if you would like to add anything, like any.
Actually, you said most of the general meaning of this this workshop. And actually, for me there was interesting to understand how the data which was extracted from the Google engine, and how this data is more important than the idea of this the composition of the tower, because there's a lot of filtering necessary for the to clear this data. And actually, this I think it's should be a little bit more time to create something and make the data sculpture, not just the sculpture, but actually maybe a little bit more analytical tool.
Yeah, we agreed with that this workshop was a great opportunity to start a new research, a new project together.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Katja. Thank you so much, Edward, for the beautiful presentation. I think the work is just impressive, and it really opens up very beautiful and individual from your side tool in architecture. Really looking forward to the next steps. And thanks again for the presentation. I would like to invite our next instructor, Daria Smakhtina from the studio Ephemera 1 to present her workshop. Daria, the stage is yours. Really good to see you.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you for your invitation. And yeah, I'm starting to share the screen. Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll tell a little bit about myself. So I'm an architect with a background around 10 years of practice in architecture, but last year I got interested in VR architecture and in virtual environments because it just started to be very actualized and very important sphere of life for us. And we started a small studio called Ephemera 1 that is making virtual environments and virtual buildings for events, for exhibitions, or some artistic workshops and some art practice. And we had a number of projects that we realized during this year. Actually, it's almost 1 year for now. And Maria just asked us to run a workshop and to have an opportunity to experiment further with people who are who have different backgrounds, and that was really exciting for us because that gave me an opportunity to look at these things from other people's minds. Oh, sorry, this is like that. I'm just showing on background the things that I showed and discussed with our participants. And one thing that I just realized during this year that virtual environment or virtual architecture gives us an opportunity to tell a narrative or a story with the means like when you construct some environment that unfolds with different lights and different textures and different details. It gives a sense of something like some story. And this is a project in Cave, was one of the examples. Actually, it is also based on data. And it was generated with data on victims of sorry with the data. Okay, I'm just so we use some data on to generate caves, and it gave a feeling of how the epidemic of this virus curves and how everything is changes. Okay, I'll just start further with the workshop. So this was our steps. So we had only 5 days to make something, to make some environment for virtual building. So we had these steps. First day for drafts, second day for just exploring the model in Mozilla Hubs that is used for Verb VR and a platform that gives us an opportunity to go into the building from mobile phone or from VR glasses. So we use it as a base platform right now. Day 3, just adding lights and materials and exploring the model. Day 4 is adding assets and important details inside Mozilla Hubs environment. So it is very intense, actually, and it was a great experiment for me just to analyze and to see how people work with this. Like not every participant had enough time or opportunity to make the whole process, but we had, as an outcome, everyone made a draft of the space or an idea of the space he wants to prepare and to make virtual. So those were the ideas of our participants. And the thing is that it was a very diverse team of people, and they had really different backgrounds. Some of them had parametrical tools, like very good in prototyping, and some had great ideas and like great things, like ideas about what they want to do, but not enough skill set to make it work in these 5 days. And we also had a linguist, for example, who just tried to make everything with us. And we just were learning in parallel, like how to make things done. And actually, we were fine with that. So these are some screenshots from our workflow. These are just beautiful things from how we prepared the model to make it work. You need to import it to Blender and to bake the textures and to play with the light and to just check like what the textures are, what the user sees first when he uploads, and how the structure is unfolding during the work. And we just discussed everything during these preparations. And there are 5 projects in different stages of completeness. Like we have this project by Zara, and yeah, she had a very good background and good knowing of parametrical tools, and she even had sketchers. So we just managed to make this work during these 5 days, and we were really happy with the results. This is called Tunnel of Comfort, and it was about like making a VR space that is very comfy and gives you a feeling of softness and just hugs you when you upload there. And this is, I will show a little bit later the results in Mozilla Hubs. This is the second project by Nana. She is a linguist, and she had an idea about what the space should, like what is the story, and not about how actually it would look, but we managed to make a draft together and to make this work in Mozilla Hubs. And this is an idea about Dante's hell, and you just upload at the bottom of the structure and go inside, and there is the hell, and you go to the not at the bottom, sorry, at the top, and you go to the bottom, and it ends up with a mirror. And the idea is that down in the hell you see yourself in the mirror, and this is the biggest scare, or the biggest, this is the thing that is always with you, I know, something like that. And those 3 projects that were not completely finished, but just people had very much fun playing with the tools, with the new tools in Blender. This is like a meditative space where you find yourself and just think about your dreams and desires, and just relax and speak with yourself inside VR. And a space about the civilization becoming like a story about rise of civilization. It is a very beautiful concept, and I think we will complete it in some time. Yeah, but this student didn't know Blender at all, and these are the results. Like, I'm happy with this. And this is an interesting project by Apeksha Jain. It's a stair maze or museum of work volumes. It's like a maze for people who upload and just explore the structure and try to understand what's going on inside. And it is very playful. And when you upload there with your friends, as Mozilla Hubs is a social platform, you can upload with many people together and explore it. It gives you very fun and exciting experience. So I just will show you a little bit insight from how this looks inside, because it takes time to upload, to I'll just to Mozilla Hubs. So those renders and the results inside VR platform, you can go inside, as I said, on any device, as like desktop or VR glasses as well. And those are avatars. We managed to make even avatars with Zara because she had enough time. This is the hell. This is how you go inside, and yeah, there is some space on the bottom. Yeah, those beautiful renders from different projects, and the stair maze. Yeah, it looks inside. So this is not completed, but yeah, you can see the preview, and I think the participants are able to complete it, because we have a mirror desk and they still come here and just prepare something to complete the stuff. And yeah, the final thing that I wanted to show is space as a story, like presentation space we want to launch in, I think, in a short time. It's almost completed. And we just want to place all the links and information about the workshop and results here to show, like, to show everything and to give an opportunity to people to research and to explore everything by themselves. Yeah, I think this is it. Then thank you, Maria. I think we will post everything on social media, and I think, yeah, we will share this link to the lobby as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daria. Beautiful work, and it's really a great way of designing experience, and just absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for your presentation. I will try to go quick and invite Alina, Chereyskaya, and Stepan Kukharskiy to present the workshop. Alina, Stepan, please.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
So to begin, I'd like to thank the whole Digital Futures team. You are doing a great job, and it was an honor to be a part of it this year. And yeah, we will share the screen. Okay. SILab gave 2 workshops, one in English and one in Russian. In our practice, we are focused on developing an adaptive approach in architecture using computational design. And we create public spaces, buildings, and landscapes that are open for transformations and changes in time. We are interested in how to build the bridge between the physical and digital worlds. And it's not a big trick for humans, but for architecture, it's not so easy. So on the first SILab workshop, WEBITECTURE, together with the students, we have been developing applications, exploring discrete or modular architecture. And the main idea of developing apps like this is to make the design process more inclusive by letting more people interact with a proposed design in a game-like way, giving them the possibility to create structures or objects out of predefined parts, provoking a dialogue or a collaboration. And it was the 4 days workshop where we covered the basics of modeling in Blender, as well as coding with JavaScript. Our group consisted of students with a different background from 14 countries. As a result, as the workshop, they developed 11 applications. And here are the names of our heroes. Now you can see, I hope, some screenshots of their applications. If you wish, you can check the applications with QR codes, which I'll show you a bit later. And this is the app by Vitaly Mativasyan. It's kind of a kit where with 3 types of modules that can work in small scale and large scale. And every application has the same logic, the same interface, the name of the project, the preview with a possible usage, a description, a toolbar, and a theme. And this is how it works. Yeah. So the students have been modeling the different modules, playing with scale, geometry, materials, connections, functions, and more. So here are just 3 types of modules and a complex structure. And then you can just remove or scale or modify somehow any part of it. And some of students focused on an urban scale, like these 2 projects on the screen. Here, the main concept was to create the flexible public spaces. And in this project, the modules were a part of the furniture kit. So the scale is a bit different. Here, modules were inspired by Kazimir Malevich, a well-known Russian avant-garde artist. And the app also operates on a small scale and allows creating storage units or some private spaces. And just one more cool app. It was done by the student who is currently taking part in a project producing artificial coral reefs with a 3D printer.
Yeah, so the app looks a bit different from other apps that were developed during the workshop, but it's really like a real-life application of the possibilities that we were investigating during the workshop. So the artificial reefs are consisting of 3D printed parts that are stacked on top of each other, and this front-end web lets you generate structures and create some varieties of the reefs that you can imagine. You can just select some points and build reefs on top of the selected points, and just press a random button and generate a random structure that would look like this. These are the QR codes for all the apps that were made during the workshops. You can just scan them and test the app by yourself. The second workshop I would mention just briefly. It was just 4 hours, not 4 days, and this workshop was in Russian, and we were trying to compare the parametric design approach and generative design approach. We were developing 2 scripts. We had students with no parametric or generative design background previously, and they were trying to understand what's the difference. So basically, this is like the first part of the workshop where we were creating the parametric structures fully controlled by architects and designers. And the second part was dedicated to creating a generative pavilion, which is more or less controlled, where you just set up some simple rules, and then you get a brief structure. Just a second, it will appear in the video, I guess. So okay. Yeah, this is like the final outcome of the second part of the workshop with generative tools. Then these are the examples of the students' work. Just some selected works that were made during the workshop. Again, this is like the first attempt, first try for many of them in parametric design tools and software such as Larina and Grasshopper. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Alina and Stepan, for the presentation and for the 2 workshops. I'm really, that's amazing, your participation within this, within the Inclusive Futures, because you've done so much of effort. And I think your approach is really making the architecture inclusive, and that was the aim, both in really giving the tools to the different type of the students or professionals, as well as designing possibly the instruments who, in order to involve even more people within the design process, basically changing the relation to the design. Thank you so much for the presentation and for your work. I also would like to thank you, all other instructors from the Russian side who were not presenting today, but there has been a great discussions. I was in the final presentations of almost all the workshops, and it has been a great pleasure to see such an amazing quality of work happening. And yeah, thank you so much for Digital Futures for inviting all of us and making this happen. They're just absolutely impressive events which are organized by such a great people. So thank you so much. It has been a great pleasure from our side to show you the work done in Russian region. Antonio, I give you the word.
Thank you. Let's move to the other side of Europe, towards the west, where there has been a great variety, I would say, of approaches in the workshops of Digital Future this year. And it's also interesting to see that in the European region, I think the instructors were actually from many parts of the world. So even the definition that these workshops are from Europe is interestingly questionable, because well, most of them were located in Europe when the workshop was happening, but really I think the knowledge inside these workshops is from all over the world. The variety of the workshops involved from topics from robotic fabrication to virtual reality to geometry explorations through coding, any type of tools, but also explorations that were more peculiar or singular even in materiality, in atmospheres, in storytelling, and more. So just to give a brief mention to the workshops that there was in the region, a workshop on Karamba and Octopus, very tool-oriented, by Böllinger and Gröman, a workshop on geometric complexity by the AA MTech group, 2 workshops on data and city urban environments, the infrared by City Intelligence Lab of the Austrian Institute of Technology, and on the other side, big data urbanism by YAC in Barcelona. The workshop Autonomous Origami, that was technically included in the Middle East region, but is related to ICD in Stuttgart, and is going to be presented later today. The workshop Explore Moon Architecture, held by Valentina Sumini of MIT Media Lab, that is one of the few workshops on space architecture that were included in Inclusive Future this year. Then a few on robotics or robot-augmented workflows by Sara Kodarin and Misri Patel, and also open source robotics by Pradeep Divadas and Sushant Varma, both of kind of introduction to robotics and remote robotics. Then the workshop Metamorphoses, Unruly Architecture and the Constellation of Ritual, that is going to be presented soon by Rolf Hughes and Rachel Armstrong, that are here with us today. And like Rework Interactions by Futurely, that is going to be presented by Arek Keshishian. Sorry for the pronunciation. Alongside a few other VR and AR workshops, Phygital Realities by I Heart Blob, and Let Me Hear Your Body Talk by the Studio Tree group of the University of Innsbruck, and Immersive Interspecies Landscape taught by myself with my partner Alicia Lazzaroni and Oscar Salguero. All of this were dealing with VR, AR, and often with social VR. And it's interesting to see how some platforms like Mozilla Hubs, Sansar, VR Chat start to become like widely used and could also be shared between different workshops. And then we have Timber Tectonics by ZHACODE, that is going to be presented today. There are Henry and Vishu here with us. And then lastly, from the Angewandte, the crowd robots prototyping. So like really a huge variety, and I think that kind of exemplifies the whole approach of Inclusive Futures of this year, all into one region. So like I mentioned, along the way, we are going to have 4 workshops presented today. Autonomous Origami by ICD in Stuttgart, Timber Tectonics by ZHACODE, Metamorphoses by the team connected to KU Leuven, and Rework Interaction by Futurely. So without further ado, I would leave the word to Yasaman for the first one.
Awesome, thank you. Let me share my screen. Okay, so thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you for all the team of the Digital Futures who made this workshop series possible, especially the organizers who had a difficult job. We really appreciate it. So I am Yasaman Tahouni. I'm going to present our workshop, Autonomous Origami. This workshop was taught by me and my colleagues Tiffany, Cheng, and Dylan Wood from the Material Programming Research Group at the ICD, Institute for Computational Design at Uni Stuttgart. Our workshop was 5 days, each day 2 to 3 hours. The first 3 days of the workshop was mainly focused on some tutorials, some lectures, and hands-on experiments with the students. And then on day 4, the students started coming up with some ideas for their mini project, which they presented on day 5, and I am going to also present them to you later. Some notes about our workshop. We ended up with 12 participants. We were looking for 15. We accepted 18, as they also accepted our offer, but from 18, 12 showed up at the end. The language of our workshop was bilingual. It was in Farsi and in English. So I was mainly in charge of the Farsi part, but my 2 other colleagues, of course, only could speak in English. So the lectures, we gave the lectures in English, and also the presentation of the projects were in English. But all the questions and answers could be either in English or in Farsi, and the desk quiz could also be in either of the languages. And we took full advantage of the breakout rooms of the Zoom for this. We also had an additional session for the Persian-speaking students, where we gave the lectures, a summary of lectures in Farsi. So I think in overall, it was a interesting and I think successful experience having this bilingual workshop. Also our participants, I think half of them were Iranian, half of them international. So it was very interesting. And our workshop was of course digital, but the nature of the workshop and the work with it was a combination of both digital and physical prototyping, which you will also see later. So the workshop Autonomous Origami was an exploration into the fields of programmable matter, origami and kirigami-inspired structures, and responsive architecture. In this workshop, we explored how materials and structures can change their shape in response to environmental stimuli, such as humidity, without requiring any electromechanical sensors, motors, or actuators, or consuming energy. So as a case study in this workshop, we explored the concept of material programming with paper. So paper, which consists of around 90 to 95% of cellulose, is highly hygroscopic. And this hygroscopic property of paper can be utilized to create structures that change their shape, for example, open and close, in response to water or to the moisture. So in this workshop, through a series of digital and physical exercises, we explored how the motion generated by paper and plastic bilayers can be combined with the origami and kirigami-inspired mechanisms to create shape-changing, humidity-responsive structures. So on the side of physical prototyping, we gave tutorials to the students, and we were building things with them at the same time using our webcams to go through this process of how to create paper plastic bilayers and how to perform this material programming stages in order to create meaningful shape change. And it was very fun. As we were doing the workshop, the students were encouraged to build the things alongside us and then show their physical prototypes. I think this is what we saw during day 2 of our workshop, when they created some shape-changing origami-inspired structures. On the side of physical prototyping, we also gave the students some tools that we had prepared before, where they could, sorry, did you hear the music of my video?
Not really, I think.
Sorry, no?
No.
Okay, great. Because, okay. So we also gave them these digital tools where they could use them to model these origami structures and simulate their folding motion, as well as some tools for simulating the bending bilayer structures. So after all, with the knowledge they gained and the experience they gained through the physical and digital tutorials, they generated some ideas for the projects to work on for one day and the last day of the workshop, and then present them. So the first project was a self-shaping lantern from Ali Reza Alikai, Ali Bahmani, Azim Behbahani, and Larina Brandt. So their idea was to create a self-shaping lantern. This was a lamp that would come with different coverings, and the coverings are flat packed. So as somebody, as a customer receives this package, they can assemble the covering on the lamp, and as the covering dries out, it self-shapes into different forms. So they explored different designs based on origami patterns. You see two of them here, two iterations of this lampshade. And they also, on the side, did some physical prototyping experiments. And then they moved on with the fabrication. Of course, this laminates of paper plastic were not so easy to create, and especially in the short time, it was very challenging. But this group made it at the end and was able to create this beautiful lampshade that was self-shaping into its final form. And some other images. The second group worked on the concept of self-regulating clothing. So their idea was to create, was to use this humidity-responsive material system on the clothing and on the wearable. And this wearable basically responds to the moisture from the human body. So they started their exploration with some patterns with the Origami design and tested them with the humidity or with splashing water, and see how these patterns could react. For example, what you see here is that these flaps open up as they spray a little bit of water to it. So if you imagine this on a piece of clothing, on sports clothing, and this like responsive cycle can help wearer and a human to like have better ventilation, responsive ventilation. And they also explored some origami patterns, as you see here, and their exploration, similar to other groups, included both simulations of this like curve folded patterns using the tool we gave them, and also physical prototypes. And the last group, Firishte, Khojastame, Ranjang, Roshnigera, and Saba Salehi, they came up with the idea of shape-changing 3D tea bag. So their idea was that they have these tea bags that are initially flat, and as you put them in a glass of water, it changes its shape, goes from flat to a 3D shape. And the main idea here is that the timing that it takes for this tea bag to pop up to 3D is informing the users if the tea is ready or not. And by kind of controlling this timing of shape change based on different types of tea, some of them need like 30 seconds, some of them 5 minutes or whatever. So this is kind of a way to interact with the user and to inform them. So they started with some explorations on the mechanisms that they can use. Here you can see the simple bilayer bending mechanism. Next prototype was a little bit more complex. They kind of combined the origami and again, the bilayer bending mechanism. You see in the middle of that structure, there is the joint. That joint is self-shaping. So as they splash water on it, that joint bends and closes the structure. And then here you see their final proposal, what they developed the last stage as their tea bag. So it has this three-dimensional origami shape that it is initially in the closed state, and as it goes into the water, it opens up. Here you see the simulation of their mechanism using the tool that we gave them. And here is them putting their prototype in the water. It is flat at the beginning, and then as it's like remaining and absorbing water for some time, it is opening up into its final 3D shape. So these were the three projects that I picked to show and to share with you. And thank you very much for listening.
Thanks a lot. Really, really interesting projects. And I think it's also so fascinating to think of doing like a workshop that is spread worldwide and that is remote, but deals with materiality, deals with the physicality also of interactions, but can be held through virtual connections between people. They spread everywhere. So now we're going to move to ZHACODE, that I guess needs no introduction, is one of the most celebrated and is an important reference in the field of computational design. So we have Henry Louth and Bhooshan that are going to share about the workshop Timber Tectonics. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, thanks, Antonio, for the introduction. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Other screen. Yep.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction and the invite to present and also run a workshop again this year. It's myself, Vishu, and Henry. We both lead the computation and design research group at ZHACODE Architects. And we also are part of the academia at the Bartlett School of Architecture, where we run a research cluster. We'll give a brief introduction of what the group is and what we intend to do through the workshop. So ZHACODE is the computation and design research group within ZHACODE Architects. It was founded in 2007 by Patrick Schumacher, Sajay Bhooshan, and Niels Fischer.
Yeah, and over the course of sort of our founding in 2007, we've sort of developed from utilities and toolkits to more demonstrators internally to sort of some interior fit outs like we see with the Science Museum, upwards to more commercialized implementations.
The research kind of sits at the intersection of what is valuable to architectural design and what technology or computation can do. And that's the intersection. And then on the right side, computation is kind of getting replaced by design technologies, varying from domains from mathematics, computer graphics, robotic and digital fabrication, structural analysis, etc.
So the group is sort of it operates in 4 basic modes. The first is as a research cluster, providing sort of project independent research on individual trajectories. This is open-ended, non-project specific. We're also working through development, creating software toolkits for specific implementations, both within the office and for other usages. We're also involved in pilot projects or special interest projects. These are more for they're more ways for us to develop R&D in a sandbox, sort of a very a good use case scenario. So often specific tools are developed with very real use cases in mind, but still very research oriented. And then as research matures, we're involved more and more on commercial projects. These are applied mature research for specific packages, whether it's structure or facades, etc.
Another mandate for the group was, along with developing research, was to build a network of collaborators, both in academia, ranging from the Block Research Group, the AA, the Bartlett School, and also at the Digital Futures since 2017. At the same time, building a network for the design technology aspects, ranging from 3D printing and robotics, data and machine learning, statistical learning, creative coding, digital timber, etc. Of the many strands of research in the team, the workshop was focused on a specific one, which is on computational geometry, and specifically on architectural geometry, which is to make visible in shape the structural fabrication and any other performance criteria. It forms a part of Tectonism, subsidiary style in parametrics. The research seeks to have historic continuum, learning from the giants of the past and try to be principally correct, and then developing on existing tools or historical methods. In this sense, we look up at heroes such as Frey Otto and for his form finding techniques. We also look up at other industries in terms of mathematicians, software designers, computer scientists, etc. This is David Huffman on his crease folding, and we trying to reinterpret that through for a metal. We also look up at architect engineers from Mexico and Uruguay, like Felix Candela and Dieste, and trying to reinterpret their shell structures as a grid shell on the right at the Beijing Biennale. And using technology to minimize on the scaffold, or trying to make it easier to build. So these are kind of the core areas of research under the domain of computational geometry. The research shares a language of geometry. It's a graphical language, easy to find mistakes, and it becomes a source of truth, and that also becomes the mode of transfer between different collaborators, especially in this scenario where we were kind of placed in multiple time zones. The goal is to not replace the designer, but to augment the designer with intelligent tools, trying to make the design better with clubbing with human intelligence. In order to do so, we need to, apart from looking at core research in academia, we also need to develop a framework of computational tools, which are developed through these kind of special interest projects, but then later after it gets matured, gets applied into projects. And it also needs to speak to the software packages within the office. So we try to keep our framework independent of any software, so it can plug and play in any given scenario. We have 3 modes of research for this particular trajectory, or any research in the office, where we try to seed at the academia some kind of ideas, gestate it, and then try to develop a much more rigorous scientific and research development through technology demonstrators. And then once the research matures, it gets applied into architectural projects. So we'll get through the workshop at this year, we were kind of addressing the first 2 aspects, trying to seed research in timber tectonics, whilst at the same time trying to build the technology demonstrator so that the students know how these can be applied to build a physical prototype. On the academia side, we tend to do these workshops where it is learning by doing. So we try to build something at the same time so we can learn the constraints of building whilst also developing the computational aspect. This is again the 5th year of us running a workshop at Digital Futures, renewing our collaboration, starting from 2017 when we did it with the Block Research Group, and subsequently looking at various modes from 3D printing to computational statics to robotic hardware cutting to digital configurators for housing. And this year we were looking at timber tectonics. The workshop focused on, we had like 12 participants, we kind of limited our students to 12. We had over 100 applicants. We had to, because of the time constraints, we had to limit it to 12. The core focus of the workshop was building up on 3D graphic statics. It is a 3D variant of the traditionally known 2D graphic statics, and it builds up on papers by Masood at Block Research Group and Juni also at Block Research Group. It builds up on precedent studies such as the Hedracrete done by the Polyhedral Structures Lab, or the MyCode tree by Block Research Group, and also continues our foray in our research in doing developable spatial structures, which were done in previous workshops. And also expanding that using the developable structures, developable surface as timber, and in this case it was materialized as bent timber, but in this workshop we were kind of looking at laminates. So because of there is an inherent advantage of making these developable, that is they unroll into flat sheets and then they can be done or manufactured with inexpensive 3-axis cutting machines like a laser cutter, or in this case a CNC machine. And then the geometry is such that it also auto registers, so it's easy to assemble as well. It develops on other timber projects we have been working on within the group, looking at facade systems or interiors and housing domains, and developing on prototyping, which we have been collaborating with the Circular Factory. So the workshop was a collaboration with the University of Calgary, the interactive design group at the University of Calgary, headed by Alicia. And Alicia is kind of a unique collaborator, as she is a collaborator both on the academic side, but also on the commercial side through her companies, Architecture Extrapolated and Circular Factory. So a bit more details on the workshop. So students were given lectures and tutorials on what is 3D graphic statics and how to form fine with 3D graphic statics. And they were exploring these tools to initially the first 2 days to just exploring the structures, which were informed by these kind of form and force diagrams, and then trying to visualize them as some kind of material surface. Once they were happy with that, then they were kind of proceeding towards kind of developing the timber tectonics for a node. Some people were looking at mixing concrete with timber. Some were looking at mixing timber with metal joineries, and some of them were looking at interconnected timber joints. And then clubbing that with how to actually physically make these things. Because they are curved, they need to be registered in space. So how do we do this? Either via bandsaw cutting, as you can see on the left, or milling it, or using actuators to actually bend them into shape. So the students explored multiple domains. And once they were happy with, comfortable with all the tools, they kind of took a design domain and tried to apply these 3 tools onto a bridge or a pavilion, housing structures, etc. In concurrent with the digital aspects, we were also developing the technology demonstrator, which was spatial curved timber laminars.
So this is also happening in parallel, slightly before the workshop, sort of prepping with material and then exposing the students to the same digital tools as we're making these. So next.
This was the tool we actually gave the students. So what the tool used to make the prototype was what the tool which the students were using. It was developing the 3D graphic statics, looking at the polyhedral force diagram, then finding equilibrium structures, and using the graph to generate these kind of developable strips. The prototype was about 3 meters by 3 meters by 2.5 meters tall. And it was continuing on the developability aspects. In this case, the laminates, the number of offsets of the mesh was driven by the forces acting on it. So kind of directly related to the force diagram of 3D graphic statics. But the advantage of being developable is that each of these strips, which were about 500 of them, can be unrolled into flat sheets and then cut with a CNC machine.
So workflow wise, the students are exposed from the beginning of sort of the graph set out of this all the way through to the parts generation and then to the final fabrication pieces that would need to go to the cutter. Just to look at some of the assembly pieces, looking at the number of nodes that are both in sort of the trunk of this, but also the scale of these, some of them which are fairly small to the ones which are much larger at the trunk. So, part of this on Alicia's side in Calgary is also, the digitization all the way through on the fabrication side. So the actual bending of the laminates is also done digitally and sort of parametrically controlled through Grasshopper as well to arrive at the individual components of each node. Next. So I can see here just sort of the raw quantity of the laminates and general size of these things that are being sort of put together into the individual nodes. So they're having to basically, take the registration of these and then prepare them to go to the actuator. Next. And so the actuation process, there are two basic strategies that we're being worked on. One is that they're singly curved elements as single members, and then also as sort of the joint of several of them to register them. So there are two riggings there that are being used on the actuators. Next. And you can sort of see what this looks like on the actual part description for the digital side. What needs to be basically made for each one of the curvatures of the parts. Next. All right, you can see several of these. So what's happening as well is these are being glued and then locked into place. So they're gluing and self-setting. So these are, they will be that bespoke curvature that comes out. So there's no active bending here in the end. These are fixed glue lambs that have been sort of clamped and glued, and when they come out of the actuator, that's the shape. Next. So we also had to look into ways to use the laser cutter to develop other components to keep this fast. So this was done inside of 10 days. So the workshop we're running with the students is across 5, and then we're doing the fabrication of the parts a little bit before and after, like I said, but this is done over 10 days, but still that needed to be optimized for laser cutting. So all of the components to sort of join these together at the midpoints of the edges were also made out of individual plies. This was done as a proxy. We would not see this being done, like in large scale, but to basically facilitate it for workshops, we're often having to look at ways to optimize for very specific fabrication processes. So here making connectors on a laser, which would otherwise have been maybe easier to do in a non-digitized fashion. Next. So this is a time lapse of the assembly process for this. So the top of this is planar, and they started assembling it sort of thinking that they would assemble it from the top down, and then they started assembling from the opposite way, sort of flipping it over and starting from the base and going up. And so while there's multiple stations happening as well, you can't see this, but they're sort of working in parallel on fabricating and cutting these things while they're fabricating or while they're assembling. So you can sort of see the scale of this thing as it was assembled in the studio, and the general size and complexity of some of the members here. You can see some of the laminates. You can see the banding. So, you know, there are 2 laminates, jump down to 4 laminates, and then up to, you know, 6 to 8 laminates as it moves down the graph. So this idea of force accumulating is picked up in the material. Next.
There were different thickness of materials used, and that naturally gave it a different color. So you can see it on the right here that the thinnest material has a bit more darker shade, which kind of also gave it like a tectonic feature of differentiating. So wherever you saw the dark brown, that means those areas have higher forces accumulating on that strip. Additional tectonic details, looking at how the nodes come together.
Yeah, you can see the trunk on this one, a number of the laminates. Happy team on the other side, an arduous process to put this together.
Yeah, the project was kind of coordinating multiple time zones from China to London to Calgary. So it was kind of like a +15 difference. So it was, the project was always continuously ongoing at different time zones.
Yeah. So just to sort of extend upon how this research gets used and how the workshops play into what we're also doing at the office in terms of digital timber, and sort of where this is going is, you know, looking at larger and larger spans for digital timber, and sort of arena structures, truss structures, space frame types of topologies, looking at catenary systems for how we can put timber into tension, also for long span construction. Next. And also for like creating more active communal spaces for gathering and general amenities to bring warmth and inviting activity to areas for whether it's commercial or residential purposes. Next. Yeah, and just supporting further and further large span structures. So this is also leading into the housing and residential side, and thinking about timber kits and how we use it for modular sort of digital modules and physical modules, and what that means for digital timber, making kits of parts that can either be sort of hosted in the sort of digital design for manufacture, DFMA sense. Next. And thinking about these digital kits and how they can be assembled and varied to sort of deploy in a number of different ways for different variations. And I think that what the workshop is also starting, you know, to get us thinking more along the lines of is on the data side, looking at the material and the fabrication and the assembly process to try and capture that digital information earlier and earlier in the process to help us make informed decisions. We're also looking at timber to sort of how we can configure this in real time, looking to Unreal Engine and how we can engage user participation in the use of these fabrications. Next. This is, yeah, just to look at one of the projects that's ongoing in Honduras, developing digital timber for bespoke roof systems built on Zollinger sort of reciprocal frame logics, built up assemblies using similar sort of digital planarization tools, set out tools. Next. And what these spaces sort of look like.
Yeah, that's the credit list for all the students. The workshop kind of, the prototype kind of sat between 2 workshops we were running concurrently between 2 weeks apart from Digital Futures and CAD Futures. And the design team and fabrication team at the ZHACODE, at the University of Calgary, and we also had support from AA Hook Park. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thanks a lot for showcasing all the process and all the bolts and nuts of this extensive workflow. I think it's really amazing to see that, you know, in a remote workshop with participants from all over the world, they could experience, you know, and see all the components of such an extensive workflow from beginning to the end. And also, I mean, the range of expertise that informed such a collective project, as you explained in the introduction, is coming from so many cutting-edge research centers that is also, I mean, so dense of like experimental information. It must have been really, really inspiring for the participants. Thanks a lot. Let's move to the last two presentations. We have the workshop Metamorphoses. That is one of the, if you want, most peculiar of this region because of the approach that is very open, and I'm very glad that we have Rolf Hughes of KU Leuven here presenting the workshop. Rolf is the Director of Artistic Research of the Experimental Architecture Group, and he is a professor in epistemology of design-led research in KU Leuven. This was in team with Rachel Armstrong, that is often participating in activities with Digital Futures, and then other participants, other tutors. Rolf, thanks a lot for joining us, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Antonio, and thank you also to the Digital Futures organizers. This is my second year participating in this initiative, and it feels like a very important initiative. So thank you for setting this up and making it happen. Rachel, I'm stepping in for Rachel here because Rachel is in Iceland. I'm not sure if she's with us or not, but if she can join us, she will. But I'll assume that she may not be there. So Metamorphosis, Unruly Architecture and the Constellations of Ritual was a 5-day workshop. It was led by Rachel, Professor of Experimental Architecture at Newcastle University. It involved Esther Armstrong, who's the Program Director for Performance Design and Technologies at Wimbledon College of Art, myself, who has a background in artistic research, storytelling, and I'm at KU Leuven, as Antonio mentioned right now, and Maria Usk, who's Director of the National Puppet Theatre, Puppet Art Museum in Tallinn, and also Jan Wurm, who's a colleague at KU Leuven and Director of Research at Arup. So that was the team. It was a very interdisciplinary team, and the workshop was really asking what would an architecture be that could transform itself in ways that are more like nature, and how might this change take place? What impact would it have on neighboring spaces, materials, inhabitants, communities, economies, political landscapes, and ecosystems? How might we respond to such unruly architecture? So we were looking at material transformation, the resilience of the living realm, and its ability to enchant. We were also looking to find a language through design that captures and helps engage with the ongoing, unprecedented, ecologically tumultuous times. So we were not asking our participants to design a building, but rather to animate an experience or propose an emerging lifestyle. They were asked to produce a video which would detail a process, explore a scenography, observe the inner life of an object that serves a ritual, follow a character that is changed by a space, or document their own personal transformation during the workshop. And each video should be characterized by one or more process of change, if not radical transformation. So here we were asking them to consolidate a set of values that they might have identified during the pandemic lockdown or considered while in the presence of nature. They will express these by designing, enacting, and transforming a site in their home, developing a ritual associated with metamorphosis using scenographic, sonic, material, and narrative or poetic transformations and performance techniques. In this way, they were asked to transform their domestic environments into a place that expresses the possibility of real change in the world. So the structure of the week was the first 2 days were really the sort of inspiration days. They were introduced to theory through a series of lectures. Rachel Armstrong on biological metamorphosis. I spoke about metamorphosis in literature and drama, particularly drawing on Greek mythology. Maria Usk, metamorphosis through puppetry or animation more broadly, and Esther Armstrong on transformational sonography. Jan Wurm also gave a lecture on transformation in materials, drawing on his practice at Arup. So these were intercut with very short assignments, which they were to deliver the same day in the first 2 cases. And then the rest of the week was given over to developing their own tasks. We presented them with the templates from Digital Futures, so they had a good sense of, clear sense of how to produce the video, how to have a short narrative, a high quality image, and so on. We gave them the templates to work with, which I'm sure others did too. And then we started. And we started with Rachel's presentation on biological metamorphosis as an extreme stage of embryology. Rachel, are you there? I saw your icon a moment ago. I'm just wondering if you're with us.
I am with you. I can't see the slides, Rolf.
Oh, really?
They seem to be scaled at a completely different ratio.
Is that true of everyone? Or?
I don't know.
I can see it quite normally.
Yeah, I can too.
I think it's quite okay on our screen.
Okay. Well, I can only see part of the screen. So, that's when you was dragging that, I could see that. Essentially, biological metamorphosis was the theme of how an organic substrate through natural processes can start off as one thing and become reorganized as a different expression of form. And it's normally a term that is used for very specific creatures. You could think of it really as being incomplete embryology, so that there are different types of metamorphoses, and depending on the creature. So frogs undergo a complete metamorphosis, and so do butterflies. And then crickets undergo a partial metamorphosis. And silverfish have a very limited form of metamorphosis. And the reason for digging down into the material transformations is really about how we have established narratives around the propensity for change, and what are the sequences of events, and what are the consequences of these transformations, and how can we actually trigger these in designs. And the framing of this process has actually created, let's call it paradoxes. This is the paradoxical frog, which has an embryonic stage that is bigger than the adult. And it led scientists like Linnaeus to actually say that the frog was degenerate. It was evolving backwards towards a fish. So the metamorphosis is not neutral. It is read through certain kinds of lenses, and it really makes us wonder whether people are able to go through a metamorphosis. Is this really just about embryology? How do we, when we have things like stem cell regeneration, and when we share body patterns in terms of homeobox genes like Drosophila, just how limited is our ability to transform, to change in an age of advanced synthetic biology, in an age where we understand spatial patterning. So it is really looking at the stuff of life that enables us to change, looks at the natural systems that go about change in a spontaneous way, but really tries to create a big picture view of change. And sorry, I'm going to have to go.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Rachel. Then we turn to mythological metamorphosis. And I drew on a number of, obviously, Kafka's famous short story, but also a number of examples from art and literature and Greek mythology in order to show how deeply ingrained the principle of change and transformation and metamorphosis is in our at least in our Western culture and in our imagination or ways of telling stories. So I won't dwell on these here because that would take up too much time, but some of the examples we went through. We spoke about metamorphosis as being not about gradual change, but the ruptures in continuity that challenge our sense of order, progress, and incremental development, embodying extreme and even magical acts of transformation that provoke discontinuities, monsters, and all kinds of uncategorizable others, each with a unique story to tell of the world. So the talks in the studio looked at different aspects and interpretations of metamorphoses. The idea is not to direct participants in any particular way, but to unleash their creativity and support their potential through the rich skill sets provided by the various tutors. We were aiming to create a bestiary of different examples, or perhaps a book of imaginary beings, as in the Borges book, the Book of Imaginary Beings, which is rich with necessary monsters. Interestingly, the students each spoke about having gone through a personal transformation over the 5 days. They were quite exuberant on the last day when they showed their work. So in that sense, the studio achieved its task of bringing change and transformation in relationship to one's own relation to one's own practice, rather. So the first task for the first day was just over 2 hours, really. It's to identify an object, establish what the object wants, identify the relationship between you, the object, and the transformation, and start writing it down. So that was the sort of lunchtime task to get people going, and then we elaborated on that when they reported in, to then start to step inside this world, figure out what needs to change, this transition to become reality or to become manifest, and ask them to storyboard the process and start developing a narrative, writing it down. So again, a number of examples. We then moved on to the second day, which was skilling up, and Esther Armstrong gave a presentation on sonography, asking what makes a ritual, speaking about the tool set in sonography or theatre, building, space, text, context, performers, music or soundscape, flow, lighting, time, costume, scenic design, and audience. Flow is an interesting one. It's something that we also work with in experience design, which is a program I created in Sweden a few years back. The notion of thinking of time itself as a design material, or rather the creation of rich experience in time as being the designer's task. So Esther was asking, what objects will you use? What will you wear? How do you make your space sacred? What do you need to rehearse or repeat? What do you do with failure or things that don't work? Offer things up and then remove or replace. Note what becomes symbolic or different or other. How will you deal with your space and audience? Are they engaged, observant, silent? And how does it end? And what each of us were trying to do was just offering a very basic tool set that, when combined together, actually created something richer than the sum of its parts. So I sort of introduced them to narrative structure and storytelling principles, and Esther sort of spatialized that by thinking of it in theatrical terms. And next, Rachel returns to give them a kitchen chemistry lesson, so that because of the lockdown, people were limited in where they could work. So we were assuming the home was the main laboratory, and the kitchen particularly. So this was a way of visualizing material change, thinking about dynamic materials, producing new images, new geometries, and new juxtapositions to inform the design process. And so Rachel provided some examples, such as filling a bottle half with water, adding a few drops of food coloring, filling the rest of the bottle with cooking oil, allowing the components to settle, breaking an Alka-Seltzer into quarters and dropping one piece into the bottle. And then voila, you have an instant lava lamp. But there was a sort of wider purpose to this, which Rachel has developed in her own practice through her work, particularly with protocells, also her work with Philip Beasley, and the notion of developing the idea of living architecture. Protocells being formed by oil and oil and water. So creating lifelike behavior, but without DNA. I'll jump ahead because we don't have so much time. But so inviting them to think about lighting, scale, getting landscapes, textures, and skins from experiments is all about your lighting. Looking for activity at the interfaces, the site of scrying, which is a term taken from Nostradamus. You know, gazing into reflections and thinking of what sort of design possibilities these might propose or create. So then the task was further elaborated to map out the details of the journey of metamorphosis using storyboarding and so on. I think I'm running out of time here, so I'm just going to wrap this up quite quickly. We had 1, 2, 3, I think there was about 16 or so participants. And so then we were responding to their work during the 2 days in which they were developing it, and they had a final presentation day on the Friday. And perhaps I'll end with, yeah, there's some images from the work that they developed. They were all videos, and we, at the end, made a sort of composite video of their various proposals, which I think if this works, I'll try to end with this. How do I get that end slideshow?
Are you swapping to the video?
Yeah. Do you see this now?
Yes, now it's full screen.
Okay,
Great.
so this is just the 2-minute video that was a sort of composite of all the different contributions.
Yes, great, thanks.
Rolf, maybe I just not put the music on, the background music, if you can,
okay,
because of copyright reasons.
Well, the video is in fact online, so if we want to save time, we can just I can just wrap it up there, and we can go to the Q&A if you like, or the next presentation.
Well, let's just see it through. It's just 2 minutes, right?
Yeah, exactly. Great.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, Rolf, and thanks, Rachel, also for popping in. Really inspiring workshop that was also covering such a broad proposition and inspiration for the participants. I think it's so interesting to see, that digital futures and inclusive futures could also include such overarching workshops, inside of and the variety from very hardcore computational to such an explorative approach, I think is something that amazes
Bro, I'm
me.
literally going in. Bye.
What? Hi. Okay, so now we have the last presentation from Futurely. Arek, hi. Probably we are reaching the end of the session, so probably instead of having an actual Q&A session at the end, we'll probably just do some wrap-up comments. So let's go to the last presentation by Arek Keshishian of Futurely. Thanks, Arek, for joining. Like I said before, in Europe we had a few workshops on VR and AR, and so I'm glad that there's one here to wrap up the session. Please, over to you.
Thank you for having me. I will share my screen now. Can you hear me properly?
Yes.
All right. So thanks for having me once again. I'm Arek from Futurely, and we did this workshop at Digital Futures the second time this year. We were so happy to be back. Actually, Futurely has been founded last year, and the first event we did was the first version of our workshop that we did this year. So the first event we ever did with Futurely was at Digital Futures. So you've been a great luck for us. So the workshop we did was called Rework Interactions. The workshop we did last year was called Rework Workspaces. As COVID just hit the world last year, we started reworking and rethinking the workspaces last year. And this year we thought we'd take it a step further and think about how we interact with digital assets and how we interact with one another in the VR world. And before I get into what we did at the workshop, I just want to talk about who we are at first. So at Futurely, we are an informal education company, which means we're very, very commercial in a sense, but we're also a plug-in education platform for architects and designers that gets plugged into academia and academics, and we like to support them in any way we can. And we like to create opportunities of cross-pollination between different academic institutions. So we love what we're doing. We're a team of 12 people right now. We're very young, and we are completely cloud-based, which means we basically have no physical address. And we are from all over the world, and we can work from anywhere. So let me get to this. So the instructors for this workshop were myself and Vamsi Krishna Vemuri, who's my partner at Futurely. And we were super happy to have Teddy Fadous and Stefana Zapuc from IAC, RCR Architects, and Neverlab. They helped us amp up this workshop in another level. Basically, Vamsi and myself were leading the VR part, the social VR part, and the interactions, while Teddy and Stefana were leading the 3D modeling, procedural modeling, and computational design part. So so the main key aspects of our workshop were social VR, gamification, immersivity, and interaction. We basically inspected how different a user experience is in a virtual space as compared to the physical spaces. And to name a few, we basically taught about and inspected about teleportation, shape-shifting, audio reaction, animated textures, and proximity detection, and much more, which were basically not there in the physical world. So these are all digital kind of characteristics. And when we're saying shape-shifting, we're not talking about biological aspects. We're talking about actually changing your shape in the digital world. So next up, our workshop was basically split into 2 parts, where we did 4 days of technical skill building with 3D modeling, procedural modeling, VR world building, and scripting for VR and social VR. And the last 2 days were basically working towards our final project outcomes. So we only had 2 days to produce our works. And the works were basically were meant to be a part of a world, a virtual world, where each workshop result is a pavilion. We realized that the pavilion culture with computational design is really a great way to do research and dive into exploration. So we try to do the same in the virtual world, where each team produces their own virtual pavilion. And the participants were 21 in the end. The ones who graduated basically managed to submit their final outcomes. And so I'm going to, instead of showing you imagery, because this is a virtual world project, I just want to show you the virtual world itself, right? And I'll just walk you through it very quickly. Let me share myself one more time in my screen. So can you see my screen now?
Yes, yes, we can.
All right. So this is the world. As you can see, we can fly through it. There's no one with me, I think, at this point, but this is a social VR experience. So I'll share the link with you so you can just jump in, or if you're in Sanzar, you can just look for Rework interactions, and that's it. You will be able to find this world right here. So let me just walk through this pretty quickly. So you can see we have some buttons here that allows you to teleport from one place to the other. And this first team is basically a team of 3, Yihan, Yilin, and Juan. And this is called the Planet Earth, where they basically created this alien invasion concept. And if you manage to just fall like I did, you have these buttons right here that takes you up again. So that's thought out. And let me just try to jump in here one more time. So you can see it's basically the gravity here is not the way it usually works in real world, and we experimented with different realities. And also a great thing we experimented with here is that these intricate geometries are usually very, very, very heavyweight for the virtual worlds, but we develop different techniques and workflows where we can have very high-res geometry in the virtual as well. And in the end, it's not as heavy as it could have been. So here you have some worlds you're walking through, but it's not just 3D models. What we did, a lot of the models here have an interaction built in them. So for example, this is like a balloon where if you click on it, or if you're in the virtual, you can also experience this world with VR headsets, of course. So it just takes you up where you can find this world right here, which works a little bit differently. And this world also has some collision glitches, which were done on purpose. But at the same time, they also have some music right here, which the further you get away from it, it changes basically. I mean, it gets lower or higher the closer you get to it, but I'm not allowed to share it because it has some copywriting issues that you might want to share this video on YouTube. So that's not going to happen, I guess. And one cool thing here is they had this, if I'm able to find it, just a second. I'm not able to find it right now, but maybe I'll find it in the bottom. Just let me go quickly. So you can see some elements, for example, here is like, if you click on it, something will happen. So elements can come up. And so it's not just 3D models. There's always triggers in a lot of places. And let me see if there's one more trigger here and there. Here. Oh yeah, there's a person here. Hi. So that's pretty cool, right? That we have people around.
It's me, actually.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Thank you for jumping in. So let me see. I guess I'll just go through the next world. So I'm just gonna come here and I'm just gonna click on this button again so I can just jump into the next world. And so this one is very interesting. It also has a sound. Let me just share it. Something like this. And when you get close, it just opens and you have this animated textures going on, which is super digital. Walk in here, and if I come close to here, you can see the top of the dome opening and then elements moving around and rotating. So let me just watch this from far. So it just opened like that. So we have these animation triggers, and it's not just clicks, but as soon as you get close to something that might get triggered. And yeah, so let me just go through the next one. There's a lot of effects going on. This was Secret Garden by Jan, Roshanak, and Sion. People from everywhere, really. Let me just go to the next one. This is pretty exciting as well. Basically, you can see all the credits in digital as well. This is Crumbling Island by Christiana, Mohammed, and Nirmal. And what you have these hovering hexagon slabs where you can just jump, and if you want, you can just go all the way up with these guys, but you can also just come here and activate the elevator. So these are all coded, right? These are all custom built. Nothing is ready-made. All the models, all the scripting embedded. You can see as I get close to this element, it just starts moving or stopping. And if I click on it, something else might happen. Yeah, it just starts rotating again. So you have the circulation systems. They are all anti-gravity. And what's really exciting for us is the reason we do this kind of workshops is because we realize this is a space where architects can have a say in. Game designers and IT companies can definitely develop this, but when architects do it, it's somehow a little bit different because I personally believe that our material is not just stone and brick and timber, but also our material that we build out of is space, and we're space builders. And I think in VR, we can build spaces that others won't think of. So for example, this space was Mount El Drago by Eva, Shueki, and Tayan. And the cool part about this project is that usually in game design, you have these collisions that should work, right? So if you get close to something, you should not be able to walk through it. But this model completely glitched that out, and you're able to walk through this model completely. And that way you can experience this model, not just from the exterior point of view, but also the interior. And you can see the model is super high res for VR, and we managed to pull it out. And this is a good achievement for this workshop. And so you can see, like, as soon as you go through it, you experience this space from inside out, and there's all kinds of experiences that you basically see and live inside. Another cool thing is basically you can have elements that change. So once you click on something and it just changes, and basically you experience it in a different way later. This last group was a group from Iran. All three were from
Eric,
Iran.
Eric, can we switch off the background sound? Yeah, great, thanks. Is that we might face copyright issues?
Right, sure. I'll do it right away. So this is Tehran Valley, inspired by Monument Valley, the game. And this is by Arash, Leila, and Mohammed. And basically it's a tower. And the cool part about it is that you have this music going on, and the higher you go, the higher it gets. So the party is going on up there. And you have all these cultural influences that happen, but it's also super digital. It's very 21st century in a way. It's not just yeah, like a copy paste of a traditional elements, right? So for example, this one is you click on it and then it just teleports you up to the other floor. And so the pink ones were the way they did it was the pink ones were basically teleporters, and then this guy, if you basically he clicked on it just now and the whole tower just moved, and this is really cool. Let me move it back. Let me just watch this from far away. If you can help me click this, I can basically take a picture of it from here. Can you click on it once again?
Click on the move the palace. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me see.
So you can see as soon as he does that, the whole palace just changes, and this is completely out of gravity and a new way to experience art of architecture, I guess, with all these big chunks moving, and there's these new spaces opening up and new elements being revealed. It's really exciting. And so here, if I, and this new teleport machine basically showed up after all of this. And if I click on it, which says after party's up there, this is where we did after party after the workshop was done. Basically, we did have all of our after party here, and you can see all of these animated textures being not in an abstract way, but also this traditional elements being reinterpreted in a new way. And now they're not just static, but they're also moving. All right, so let me just quickly share my other screen. I'm gonna thank you for listening and letting us do this once again. We're always happy to stop by, and we had fun. It's always intense, but in the end, it's very rewarding, and sharing information is always its own reward. And we like to thank you for allowing us to do this. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Eric. It was very nice to also join you in the metaverse with my zebra avatar. It would be nice one day to organize a session of Digital Futures directly, all inside a virtual world. Well, I think it's been like a really, really inspiring session, all in all, with so many inspiring presentations, and I think showcasing the variety of workshops that there was this year, really, really extensive. So since we have already passed the 6 p.m. mark, I think we probably would just do a sort of quick round of wrap up thoughts and comments rather than doing an actual Q&A, because otherwise it might extend too long, and we don't want to also keep you here too much. But maybe we can go back to in the order of how you have presented. So we can start back again from the Russian workshops, and then just for a round of wrap-up comments. So I don't know if Katya.
Hi, hello. Hi.
Yeah.
Well,
again,
really impressive presentation. It was really nice to see everybody's work and everybody's workshops, and it's so different, but at the same time, just yeah, so many ideas, and really, really inspiring each of the workshops. So I don't know. I'm just very grateful to be part of it. Looking forward to be part of it next year with you.
That would be amazing.
Maybe as a participant, to be honest. I'll be happy to apply some of them. But
I mean, there are also so many. It's interesting to see in this, for me, in this presentation, that there are also so many points of connection, overlaps in tools and knowledge and competencies. No, that of course there could be some synergies between teams that are really, really interesting. But at the same time, also, I think what is interesting about the Inclusive Futures format is that it happens so spontaneously. You know, all the different teams work very, very freely and very independently as well. So that makes everything also not too institutional or structured. No.
Yeah, it's just to kind of follow your trace of thoughts. It's a great platform for experiments because there is a lot of kind of improvisation on the way. You know, people who apply, people who participate, they have different backgrounds. You have not necessarily architects. You can collaborate with. We had a fashion designer. We have with people from all around the world. We had to speak in 2 languages simultaneously to make sure that everybody understands. So that was like a hybrid of Russian and English. So and at the same time, it's a great opportunity to create this hybrid of different practices together. So yeah, that was great.
Thanks so much. I don't know if Daria and also SA Lab, you want to.
Yeah, thank you so much. I just wanted to tell, there were so many workshops, and actually I just wanted to participate in some of them myself. And also I wanted to thank you for those amazing people that participated in my workshop, for example. They were really talented and very initiative. And yeah, it is a big deal to find those people to work with. So I'm really happy and proud to be part of workshops this year, and looking forward for the next year to just experiment a little bit more and to make more sense and find different ideas for the workshop. So thank you so much, guys. I see that you have a big history of your workshops, and I'm really happy for the invitation. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Daria.
On behalf of SA Lab, I'd like to say thank you to everyone responsible for this amazing opportunity and Inclusive Futures Festival. I think it's a great opportunity for us as tutors to experiment and make something new and maybe unexpected, and for students from all over the world as well to join and learn something new techniques and new software. And I really love that the workshops are developing and evolving not only on theoretical level, but also have some real life applications as well. And I think Alina will say something in Russian.
Yeah, if you don't mind. Я хотела бы поблагодарить всю команду и, конечно же, студентов, которые принимают участие в таком мероприятии с учетом разного вообще времени и зон, в которых мы существуем, городов. Это такая непростая задача. Я знаю, что многие совмещали обучение с работой, и поэтому это очень классный опыт. Я думаю, что если что-то было пропущено, всегда можно посмотреть в записи, и поэтому это делает этот процесс невероятно важным. И Я думаю, что в следующем году Digital Future станет еще больше, еще масштабнее, еще интереснее, и будет вовлечено еще больше студентов, тьюторов, и надеюсь, что мы встретимся в следующем году. Спасибо.
Спасибо. Thank you.
Thanks so much. The language question is really nice, I think, for Inclusive Futures 2021. We were really looking forward to have an event that would include many languages and that could speak different languages means also speak different sensibilities and different cultural backgrounds. And the same goes for Yassi's workshop that was also taught in Farsi.
Yeah, Duolingo. It was really interesting. So I will. Should I go ahead? Say something.
Sure, please.
Yeah. So I also wanted to thank you for making this whole platform and making it possible to have this kind of workshop. And I think this was just a great opportunity, kind of that came with the COVID and this whole digital life that we live in now, that knowledge is just shared regardless of where people are physically, and people can work together. In our teams, we had groups from all over the world, different languages, different time zones, but they still work together, even on some physical prototypes, and they managed to like produce something together. And I think this just shows that we can go beyond the borders of our like physical constraints and really share our intellectual capabilities with each other. And also this whole like bilingual experience was really cool for us. So I think I can encourage all the people to do that for the next years. And just to say it in Farsi too, واقعا تجربه جالبی بود. من خیلی خوشحالم که تونستم که با زبان فارسی چیزی از نالجم رو شیر کنم با شماها و امیدوارم که سال دیگه هم بتونم همچین تجربه داشته باشم. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Yassi. From ZHACODE, thanks so much for your presentation.
Yeah, so I mean, I just wanted to sort of second what was, just mentioned from Yassi, that, the Digital Futures format it's been really great. Like one of the few things that's come out of the pandemic that we can really appreciate, the fact that, we can share knowledge across time zones, and that we can include many different, nationalities and backgrounds, to come together in a format and produce things, that it in using the digital platform to do this, that sort of goes beyond any language barrier. And that's been really great. And I think that that's something that would have been challenging a few years back to do this type of, this type of workshop. And that's been really fantastic. So thank you to all the coordinators for all of your hard work to sort of put this together and engage us, and chase us around to make sure that, we can keep this open to as many people as possible, that want to participate and provide energy to the profession and in these various disciplines. It's been great to see the work today. The amount of energy and dedication that's being put into the field is phenomenal. And it crosses so many things, from creative arts to visual augmented reality and sort of what's been doing, just making things as well. So thanks again. And we'll continue as long as you ping us to participate, and we look forward to the next round of innovation on the horizon. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. I mean, it's so amazing to me to see that it feels like it's already a mode of operation, this type of gathering, and it's just a year and a half that let's say Digital Future is operating in this fully virtual remote platform. But it really feels like so much already kind of absorbed by everyone. And like you said, it helps connect so freely. That is really inspiring. Rolf,
next year,
yes.
probably you will see more digital avatars than us physically. Like
yes.
yes. We should try holding it in VR.
Exactly. Well, very soon, because the discussion on when the kind of mainstream metaverse open up is going to happen is very, very timely now. I think Facebook Horizon released one portion of just the meeting application a few days ago. So the mainstream side is going to hit soon. Be all prepared. Rolf and Rachel, in case she's still around, thanks.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Antonio. I think Neil nailed it in the comments. He said, together we can change the world and help to democratize education. And I think I've come across a lot of colleagues who've been bemoaning the absence of live face-to-face meetings over the last 18 months or so. And as I work with performing arts, I'm sympathetic to that, because we all miss the liveness of live events. At the same time, the example I always cite is Digital Futures and now Inclusive Futures, because it really shows the potential of this sort of format to reach parts of the world and interested parties that would not be reached by conventional educational institutions and structures and gateways that are very good at sort of keeping people out. So I'm old enough to be from a sort of punk generation where you just, you don't ask for permission, you just get up and do it. And I think there's a sort of punk quality to this as well that I really like. I also think poor theatre is another sort of influence where you work without budgets and you just, you appeal to the imagination rather than to the expensive sets and so on. So I think there's also part of that in Digital Futures thinking. I think finally that the idea of creating communities of trust and experimentation is really important, because without the trust, nobody risks anything. People just stick to what they know, they stay in their comfort zone. But if you create the conditions of trust, then people are really willing to go beyond their habits and their usual sort of mannerisms and so on. And then the culture of or communities of experimentation, I think, equally important, because that way innovation lies through trying to combine things that don't normally belong together. And we have a professor of experimental architecture with us, so maybe Rachel, you'd like to add some words on the experiment or anything else.
Thank you, Rolf. Thank you also for your presentation, and I'm sorry I've been intermittently present. But I do think that Digital Futures and Inclusive Futures are the most important platform right now, not just for architecture, but a kind of cross-cultural, cross-disciplinary exchange. And it's just amazing to hear the different languages, different perspectives. And it's really interesting. It seems that the digital platform is finally coming into what it could be. In universities, we've had digital learning for 15 years or so, and nobody's bothered. And this has really been a transformation in communication. And I think Rolf's comments are absolutely spot on, that there's still a lot of resistance in the sense that people want to return to the old studio way. And I think that Neil and everybody at Digital Futures, you've scratched the surface of something amazing. So please keep at it.
Thanks so much. And thanks so much, Rachel, for making it. I know you are kind of traveling and doing field research in this today. So thanks so much for joining in. And Rolf, for your very, very spot on, as everybody commented, reflections on this, especially on this point of how the community aspect is relevant to be able to experiment collectively, which I think is very important for us. thanks so much, everyone. So Arek, well, you kind of made a comment at the end of the presentation, but again, thanks so much for bringing us in the virtual world of Futurely. Well,
always nice to have you.
Thanks so much, everyone, for participating. I'm sorry that we extended a little bit, but I think it was like such an inspiring session. Thanks, everyone. And next week, we are going to have a session, I think, organized by Tom Veribes. So that has put up a very, very interesting panel. So follow on our YouTube channel. And thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.